Greetings everyone, welcome to Narana's. This is Chaitanya. In this daily news analysis, we are going to select certain articles from the Hindu and Indian Express and do a detailed analysis of it. The topics that are selected are as follows: Understanding simultaneous elections from the Hindu page number 12, Changing Tides, which is on Myanmar, the Hindu page number 10, and Broadcast Regulation 3.0 Commission and Omission, which is about the broadcasting regulation. It is from the Hindu page number 10. And India is set to launch X-ray polarimeter satellite, says ISRO. It is from the Hindu page number 16. And core sector growth speeds to 12.1%, which is from the Hindu page number 18. Now let us look into the first article. The topic is on simultaneous elections, that is simultaneously conducting polls at the center as well as state level, sometimes even the third, sometimes even the local body levels. That is why it is called as simultaneous elections. The title of the topic is Understanding Simultaneous Election. The relevance of the topic, we have to know about the pros and cons of holding simultaneous elections. The syllabus, GS paper 2, Electoral Reforms and Public Policy. Previous year question, we have seen in 2017 there was a question on simultaneous elections. The context is Union government has proposed the formation of 6-member panel which has been notified, and the task of this panel is to examine and make recommendation for holding simultaneous elections, and that too the Lok Sabha level, state assembly level and local body level. The panel had an interaction with the Law Commission which are trying to recommend measures so that we could hold simultaneous election by the year 2029. Let us see the arguments in favor of the simultaneous election. The first argument is it incurs massive expenditure. So holding elections at the state level, central level, etc., and that too repetitively, will lead to high incurrence of expenditure. And instead, if we hold the elections both at the state, central as well as local level at once, the expenditure can be reduced because the same amount of machinery is required to conduct the elections at all the levels. We can save the money. Next, it prolonged deployment of security forces. We have to transfer the security forces from one place to another to conduct elections again and again in the different parts of the country. Certain states' elections are conducted at one point, other states at other points. Added to it, local body polls as well. And central level. Added to it, we have bi-polls. So all these lead to deployment of security forces from one place to other. Instead, we could see that strategically hold elections at once and see that in the rest of the period, we could use them for the purposes that are really intended to. Like for example, insurgency, Naxals, terrorism, etc. That's how security issues could be resolved. Next, developmental works. We have seen again and again that model code of conduct is implemented when the elections are being held. That will actually put restrictions upon the executive to execute the development works, blocking the new initiative or putting restraints on the ability of the executive to execute the existing developmental schemes. This could be overcome. That is possibility of policy paralysis. Next, no new projects are allowed, as we already seen in the model code of conduct. Then the populist schemes are generally launched rather than looking for long-term measures. Parties try to attract the voters, for that they start initiatives like freebies. These might not have long-term consequences. Instead, if they focus on developmental activities rather than on whether they are going to get the popularity or not, the development of the country could be taken forward. And the continual electioneering that happens in India is blocking these measures. And less role of money. Why? Because instead of conducting the elections again and again, if you conduct once, then parties could utilize their finances efficiently rather than use them again and again, try to mobilize more money for campaigning purposes or other purposes to communicate with the voters. And what we see due to continual electioneering is the parochial identities take center stage. Regionalism, casteism, communalism, etc., etc. They try to shape the identities and do vote bank politics to gain power. Instead, if we focus on one nation, one election, then the important issues that are at stake are going to be taken up, because we are trying to influence not only the state elections but also the entire country. And doing the that is overdoing the parochial identities to garner votes is going to get national traction, thus reducing the ability of the political parties to use divisiveness to win elections. Then it will affect turnout, because we are seeing fatigue among electorates to vote at various levels. If we conduct the election simultaneously, then we have a chance of higher turnouts. We are already seeing lower turnouts to the state elections, especially Lok Sabha, that is central level. Next, arguments against simultaneous elections. It is against the federal spirit. The thing is that focusing on the central level and focusing on the state level are altogether different. States have their own issues which are lingering, and those are the issues that the citizen takes and citizen give importance to and vote to a particular candidate. There are concerns that centralization of elections will ultimately lead to sidetracking the important issues that the people are facing at the regional level. Then it will push local and regional issues to the periphery, as we have already seen, due to centralization. Next, the EVM purchase, VVPAT, etc. The expenditure is anyway going to rise. Even if you might say that deployment of security forces is at stake, even at the central level, we might not have enough armed forces to take care of the centralized or nothing but simultaneous elections at single point of time. And then biennial elections to legislative councils, Rajya Sabha, and by-elections would still be held, because when the seat gets vacant on account of one or the other reasons like death of an MLA, etc., we have to conduct the polls anyhow. Added to it, the continual electioneering that happens in India leads to higher accountability because political parties will get a touch or get a note of the sentiment that the people have, whether they are satisfied or not. And on that basis, they try to deliver the works that are of importance to the people. And these simultaneous elections might not enable citizens to hold the executive accountable. Why? Because if they are voting again and again, that means it depends upon the work of the government. If you are stopping 5 years to get the updation on the likeliness of the citizens with regards to one political party, it might take away the task of accountability from them. Next, it keeps voters engaged and enthusiastic, because you have to communicate again and again with the voters. Now, we need to make certain changes in the constitutional provisions to hold simultaneous elections in the first place. Article 83 fixes the term for Lok Sabha. Now, there are certain cases where the Lok Sabha term can be increased. Like, for example, Article 352, National Emergency. Then we have Article 85, under which we can dissolve the Lok Sabha. What if a particular party loses majority in the Lok Sabha? What happens to the state legislative assemblies which are in the term or tenure, which still have certain tenure? What about the rights of the state citizens? That is, for example, Telangana citizens or AP citizens to see that their government is in power because it has the numbers. Next, Article 172 fixes term for state legislative assemblies, which might not actually align with the Lok Sabha. That is what is happening now. Many of the states' elections are not aligned with the national level elections. Next, Article 174 deals with the dissolution of the state legislative assemblies. Would you dissolve the state legislative assembly if the ruling party loses majority, or any party is not able to form government in the first place? Thus, we have legal and constitutional issues. And legal issues, we have to get the permission from 2/3 majority of both the houses. At the same time, at least half of the states should support it. That is, legislatures of the states should give approval. But presently, simultaneous elections debate is not being done with consents of various states. Various states haven't given their approval or consensus or their opinions to communicate with the center and come at a consensus. Added to it, no party has even simple majority in the Rajya Sabha in the first place. So how to get the consensus with the parliament itself? Next, states have different parties in power many of which are not in favor of such amendments. Many have already shown their disapproval of simultaneous elections. And local government is entirely state subject. So states have passed their own legislations to conduct elections and how to conduct elections. So we have to amend or modify various state legislations to get even the local body polls within the confines of the simultaneous elections. And this in itself is shown from the total of 56 sets of legislative provisions which deal with the local body elections. Add to it, we have judicial review. As you know, many of the principles that are enshrined in the constitutions are being violated, like federalism. We don't know whether it will overcome the test of the constitutionality. This completes the article. Now, let us look into the next one. This article is about the civil war that we are witnessing in Myanmar. The civil war is between the military junta, which is in power in Myanmar. Nothing but the military has taken over the power over the civilian government, and now it is controlling Myanmar's activities. And between civilians who are fighting for safeguarding or restoring the democracy. We'll see the events in the Myanmar and how it will impact India's relationship with the Myanmar and how India should deal with the present situation. The title of the topic is Changing Tide on Democracy and Myanmar Civil War. Relevance of the topic, India-Myanmar relations and Rohingya crisis. UPSC syllabus, GS paper 2, national and international importance with regards to the current events that occur. The context is the civil war. Civil war where the national union government's forces, that means there is a national union government which is in exile, that means it is not in Myanmar at the moment, but it claims to be the government which represents the people of the Myanmar. National union government, along with certain allied forces which are armed in nature, are fighting to restore democracy in Myanmar. We are going to see what are the events that are occurring at the moment in the Myanmar. So the thing that has happened is these groups are actually winning over the military junta which has taken over the Myanmar's regimes. That is actually rekindling the hope of democracy in Myanmar. So the current scenario, the Tatmadaw is the military junta which has actually seized the power in the year 2021. The Three Brotherhood Alliance is a coalition of ethnic armed groups which we are talking about, the ethnic armed groups which are armed and are fighting against the military junta, have started the offensive, that is they are fighting against this military junta. That has ultimately led to thinning of the forces of the military junta, that thus their control over the Myanmar is not total. It is declining, actually it is thinning. And this actually is emboldening or nothing but giving morale to the national union government and its allied militias which we have talked about, that is but People's Defense Forces. Now, what about this national union government which is the government in exile which seems or which claims to represent Myanmar? The national union government and its allies are actually gaining international recognition. That means various countries are recognizing them to be, that is, many are giving legitimacy to their existence as if they are running the government or they are the ones who are in charge of the governance of the Myanmar. European Parliament has recently given its acceptance to the national union government and its allied forces. India has a difficult choice here. Why? Because military junta is not an ordinary thing. It controls Myanmar. If it controls Myanmar, it dictates how Indian and Myanmar relationships are to be held. Military junta has close ties with the Chinese government. Thus, China's influence on the military junta or subsequently the Myanmar is going to rise. For that purpose, India should try to tread carefully or else it will lose the grip over Myanmar. Thus, it has traditionally maintained ties with the junta. But what we are witnessing now is The junta, due to its reduction in power or hold over Myanmar, is resorting to measures that ultimately impacts the civilian. The civil war is gaining pace, ultimately destroying the properties, lives, etc. So India has to make a choice whether it still wants to continue its ties with the military junta or it should support the forces which are trying to protect the democracy or restore the democracy in Myanmar. Now let us look at the origin of civil war. The origin goes back to 2020 elections, where what we have witnessed is the Tatmada military has alleged that the electoral fraud has been conducted that ultimately led to they overcoming the civilian government, which is headed by Aung Suu Kyi, and taking over the control over the government. Then what happened is the resistance from the democratic forces, that is democratic forces, which wants the democracy to be continued as a form of governance or government, led to opposition among them. And that has actually led to formation of anti-junta allies, that is those who oppose the military rule. As we already seen, the People's Defense Forces and National Unity Government. And this ultimately led to subsequent refugee crisis. That is, refugee crisis is rising. Refugees are nothing but the ones who are trying to seek the protection from other countries on account of the events that are happening in their home countries, here in Myanmar, because there is a lot of disturbance there, law and order issue, death and destructions. They are trying to be in safety locations like India or other countries. As Myanmar borders India, we have the possibility of refugee crisis escalating beyond our control. If there are more refugees that keep on coming to India, then India has to safeguard them. We don't know whether all the refugees are proper or not. That is, whether we can accommodate everyone. We have to give them food, etc. Some might have other kind of inclinations, like say destroy the peace of India. Certain times, what we see is countries like Pakistan try to use this opportunity to migrate certain miscreants, which create disturbance in India. So that is a potential challenge to India. Now, potential impact on India-Myanmar ties. What should India do? We have long history of cooperation, but recently we are seeing certain issues because of the military junta rule in the Myanmar. In 2021, India has actually cancelled many infrastructure projects on account of the military junta's takeover in Myanmar. And at the same time, it was reluctant to provide military assistance to the junta. So this gives a good possibility to generate goodwill among the citizens of the Myanmar, but there are certain issues. The influx of Myanmar's refugee is causing a problem to India. Now let us look into certain agreements between India and Myanmar in the past. The economy and trade related agreements. Bilateral trade. India and Myanmar has good bilateral trade. You could see from the numbers of $1.6 billion of trade that has been conducted in the year 2022-2023. In addition to that, we also have border trade. In the year 1994, we have opened 2 operational border trade points, More Tamu and Zoktarri. We are also in the forefront when it comes to providing disaster relief under our Human Assistance and Disaster Relief Program, where we have helped Myanmar during the cyclone Nargis issue in the year 2008, and during the Shan earthquake, India provided the assistance of $1 million. Connectivity is important between India and Myanmar because ultimately the development of Northeast could be fastened or improved in pace if our relationship with the Myanmar are good. Added to it, as you know, the Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia, Thailand, etc., we could use the route through the Myanmar to get proper connectivity with these countries to increase the trade-related activities. That ultimately quickens the development in the Northeast region. So we are focusing excessively on the connectivity projects between India and Myanmar. The Tamu Kalewa Kalemyo Highway, which was inaugurated in the year 2001, is also called as Indo-Myanmar Friendship Road. Then we have Kaladan Multimodal Transit Project that India is building to link Kolkata to Sitwe in Myanmar. And then what? we are going to use the Myanmar's Kaladan River to India's northeast. That is, we use the Kaladan River to traverse through the Myanmar and ultimately get connected to the northeast regions. So this improves the connectivity between India and northeastern states because we have this geographical barrier. It's not geographical barrier, geographical difficulties because of the chicken neck, and thus we need multiple channels through which we could connect northeastern regions, reduce the time, etc. Next, the Asian Trilateral Highway, which is an international initiative between three countries, India, Myanmar, and Thailand. The defense cooperation in India-Myanmar bilateral exercises. Added to it, Myanmar contributes or cooperates to us in tackling the insurgency crisis that we are witnessing again and again. So, insurgency, especially as you know, the northeast states are still infested with insurgents. We need to curtail them. For it, Myanmar's assistance is important because many times these insurgent groups use the international borders to see that they are able to safely relocate themselves to the Myanmar when Indian forces attack them. So this completes the recent issue of the India-Myanmar relation due to the civil war in Myanmar. At the same time, how India should conduct itself to maintain proper relations with the Myanmar. This completes the article. Now, let us look into another article. Coming to the article, this article is on recent broadcast regulation draft that has been released. We will try to examine whether they are restricting the freedoms, or whether they enable the growth of the content, quality of the content, freedom to develop more content, etc., in online platforms or through media channels, etc., and how they will enable us to regulate the content that has been produced properly. The title of the topic is Broadcast Regulation 3.0 Commission and Omissions. Relevance of the topic, we are going to learn about broadcasting services or pros and cons of broadcasting services regulations bill from GS paper 3 technological advancements. Now the context, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has released the draft of broadcasting services regulation bill. So why do we need these new broadcasting rules? Because the existing ones, though they are able to regulate the content, but we need more tools to regulate. Given the digital transformation that we are witnessing that is leading to increasing or rapid creation of content every day. The content, as you know, has the ability to influence the psyche of the social public. Thus, there is a need for regulating it such that it doesn't disturb the harmony or it is not against the inclinations of the citizens in entirety. It has to have the just criticism, but it shouldn't. Now, the content control. We have to control the content because of the rapid creation, protection of consumers who are consuming it. At the same time, if you're consuming the content, you will know the individuals who are consuming the content if they are subscribed to that particular created channel or created content. Thus, identity, etc., is to be protected. And the technological advancements. Recently, we have seen the boom of over-the-top platforms, streaming services, etc. And thus, consumption of the content is also rising. The competition and monopolies were because certain players could actually monopolize the content. If you look at OTT platforms, they are trying to monopolize the content channel either through reducing the subscription fees or by integrating them with other channels. If they are too powerful, then it becomes difficult. Why? Because they will destroy all the competition. At the same time, try to dictate the price to the consumers. Now, the important provisions of the bill. First one is with respect to subscribers' data and audit. Another regulation is that the content creators or the content delivery platforms have to collect the data of the subscribers and give it to the government. So, this will be accessed by the government, obviously. At the same time, it talks about the external audits, that is, auditing of the extent of the subscribers. The identity of the subscribers and their preferences will be known. Thus, many oppose it because it could actually revealing of the identity of the individuals and thus against the right to privacy. Now, audience measurement and ratings data is also to be made public. This obviously is clear in itself. Next, expansion of broadcasting definition. Within the broadcasters, we are also going to include the OTT platforms, that is over-the-top platforms. Now, here comes the issue of the Regulation. The regulation is whether it is to be done by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology or it is to be done by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Who is better equipped with the tools to regulate these content delivery platforms properly is an issue. Next, provisions related to news media and journalists. Even the news media and journalists have been included within the definition of the broadcasting. Thus, the extent of jurisdiction of broadcasting is being increased and trying to regulate all of them. Establishment of content evaluation committee is to be done, and this establishment is with respect to self-certification of the news programs. Thus, whatever the platforms that exist, they have to self-certify that content that has been created. This ultimately is also a problem. Why? Because whether we'll be able to effectively regulate the content. Next, the scope for government intervention. The scope is high. One of the important opposition to the bill is the power that has been given to the government to regulate the platforms. Government has been given the power to impound their equipment, seizing their equipment, inspect the broadcasters without intimating them, and curtailing broadcasting when in interest of the public interest. And thus, this is vague and gives enormous power to the government, which ultimately curtails the freedom of expression. Next, the violations of the program and advertisement code attracts deletion or modification. So even the government has the power to delete the content or even modify the content that has been or that will be delivered on the platforms. One of the important modifications done in the bill are the private actors are to be allowed in terrestrial broadcasting channels. What happens is the private entities' participation in the terrestrial broadcasting channels will rise. Till now, what we have seen is it is occupied by the state Doordarshan. But there is a concern here. The concern is that the private channels might use terrestrial broadcasting as a medium to deliver their content rather than continue the usage of the satellite or other means, satellite or dish, etc. If all of them use terrestrial broadcasting, there is a possibility of reduction in the diversity of the suppliers. This is one of the issues. Now, there is a lacuna in the bill as well on ownership. Again and again, what we are seeing is a raising date of who is supposed to control the ownership. The ownership shouldn't be such that an individual player should hold all the possible platforms through which he could or she could deliver the content. Because that ultimately gives them unlimited power. We already know the extent of control that or influence the content has on the media, on the public. So there is a need to reduce the cross media and vertical ownership such that the freedom of expression could be upheld, or else it will be controlled by few players. Next, on regulation, it is silent on independent broadcast regulator. There is a need for independent broadcast regulator. Instead, it talks about the Broadcast Advisory Council, that is establishment of Broadcasting Advisory Council. What the problem it brings is the grievances, etc., are to be registered with the Broadcasting Advisory Council. Remember the extent of subscribers we have. Do you think the Broadcasting Advisory Council has got the time to listen to all the grievances? So how to regulate or how to resolve the issues of the issues of the content observers is also an issue. This completes the article. Now let us look into another one. ISRO gave a communique that it is going to launch X-ray polarimeter into the space. That gives us the wider ability to understand or explore the deep space as well as space, especially to learn a thing or few about the stars and other important events. The title of the topic is India set to launch X-ray polarimeter satellite, says ISRO. The relevance of the topic, we are going to learn about the X-ray polarimeter satellite ISRO. And for mains, awareness in the fields of space. Previous year questions we have, why is Indian regional navigation satellite system needed? How does it help navigation? So this is the question. The context. Context as we already seen, ISRO is set to launch and it will aim exploration, and exploration is through the polarization of intense X-ray sources. We are going to learn about the polarization as well. Why? It will enable us to improve our understanding of the space and space related events. What is XPOSat? Firstly, we are going to use PSLV launch vehicle to launch this satellite into the space. What it will do is, it will revolve around the Earth in a non-synchronous orbit at an altitude of 650 kilometers. And if you look at the inclination or the angle it makes with the equator, it is 6 degrees. Now the duration of the mission is expected to be 5 years. Why this is important is the polarization. The polarization enables the satellite to understand the light that is emitted in multiple dimensions. Not only two-dimensional, but multiple dimensions. And this image in itself shows how this equipment will enable us to decode the images that the light sends us. Light, after all, are nothing but electromagnetic waves. And understanding the source or understanding these electromagnetic waves enable us to understand the source. The source, obviously, here are nothing but light emitting objects. It might be star, it might be any event like black hole, or even the planets. Why? Because planets reflect the light that is received from their stars. So in this way, our understanding of the space will be deepening, and thus the source reading of these electromagnetic waves, that too in multiple dimensions, enable us to understand the images. As we could do imaging, we could do time domain research and spectroscopy. All come within the ability of the satellite to do the research for us. Coming to the X-ray satellite. What are the X-ray satellites? X-ray satellites are high energy photons. So these have high energy photons, and that enables us to make proper observations. These are much more realistic than visible light. But the only problem is we cannot be able to understand or make certain observations about these X-ray in the ground-based stations. Why? Because they are absorbed by the obstructions by clouds or atmosphere, etc. Doesn't enable us to be transmitted to the ground-based station accurately. So what do we need is we need to observe them in the space itself. Let us look into the examples of X-ray satellites. XPOSat is India's first dedicated X-ray polarimetry satellite. We have Chandra X-ray Observatory. We have XMM Newton, which is of European space agencies. We have New Star of the NASA. You need to know the important missions of various space agencies like NASA, etc., especially for preliminary examination point of view. Now the contributions. So what could we expect from this XPOSat? The first expectation is to understand about the neutron stars and black holes. As we already seen, we could understand the source of the light. Light is nothing but electromagnetic wave, and thus broaden our research. Next, we could understand accretion disks, which are around the black holes, and the range of sources, nothing but stars. Next, high sensitivity. That is, the polarimeter has high sensitivity to decode whatever the message that lie hidden in the light. This completes the article. Now let us look into another one. Recently, what we have seen is the rising growth rates of the core industries, the core sector, what we call it as. It is index of core industries that shown a promising number. This ultimately has the ability to increase the overall economic growth rates. We are going to see in this explanation the index of core industries and why it is important for the overall economic impact. The title of the topic is the core sector growth. What we are going to learn is about the core sector in IIP and the growth in core sector. The growth rate numbers. Syllabus, current affairs from economy, especially the questions on indexes are important because they are continually asked in the examination of UPSC, prelims especially, and you could use this number for elaborating your mains answers as well. What we have seen in the previous year's examination, one of the questions is in the year 2015. In the index of 8 core industries, which one of the following is given the highest. So the answer is electricity generation. It is B. Now let us come to the context. Firstly, Index of Core Industries is released by Ministry of Commerce and Industries. What we are going to deal now is to assess the numbers of 2023-2024, that is ICI numbers. And what we have witnessed actually is 12.1% growth in the core sector. And this assessment is done with the same period of the previous year. For example, if this is December and I want to compare the growth rates, so what we are doing here is we are comparing December year's growth rate of the last year 2022 with the 2023, and then we'll try to assess whether it is growing or not. So similarly here we are trying to compare it with the previous year's same period quarter, that is the quarter of an year, 1/4 of a year, that is 3 months of this year with the 3 months of the last year, and then come to the conclusion. Firstly, what is core sector? What is core industries? What are core industries? The index of core industries, as the name itself suggests, is calculated from the core industries growth. The core industries here refer to the following. There are totally 8. They are electricity, steel, refined products, crude oils, coal, cement industry, natural gas, fertilizers. And the base year is also important. Understand it, it is 2011-12. The total weightage of the core industries in the index of industrial production is 40.27%. Index of industrial production, as the name itself suggests, it tries to assess the industrial output growth rate. So core industries is also taken to calculate the index of industrial production that gives the overall picture of the industrial growth rate in the economy. Core industries, as the name itself suggests, these are important industries within the overall industrial sector. Why they are mostly considered to be a positive indicator of the growth of the overall economy is because of their usage as raw materials or inputs, right? These are all inputs. If the demand of the input is rising, that itself is an indication that the overall output of the economy is going to rise. Thus, it indicates the increasing growth rates of the economy. So this is one way of looking into the numbers. So the other thing that you have to understand is 4 of the core industries have witnessed double-digit growth rates. That is electricity, coal, cement, steel, etc. And the overall growth rate is significant because of the same quarter numbers. The 2022-2023 has been 8.4%. But now we have witnessed 8.6%. This growth is not on account of the base effect, that is lower growth rates of the previous quarter. But even though having higher growth rates in the previous year, yet we have witnessed higher growth rates in this year itself is an indication of the positive developments in the economy. So what to expect? The expectation is simple, that our overall growth rate is rising. It is 7.6% in comparison to our projected growth rate, which is 6.5%. We have estimated that probably our economy will grow at 6.5%. But what we have seen is it has grown at 7.6%. That is in the second quarter of the year 2023-2024. So this completes this article. Now let us look into another one. Coming to the prelims practice questions. The first question is on, with respect to terrestrial broadcasting, which of the following statement is not correct? It utilizes physical cables, coaxial or optical fiber optic to deliver signals directly to the homes. This is false. So we got the answer in the first reading itself of the option A. So the answer is A. Next, with respect to simultaneous election, which of the following statement is not correct? A. Simultaneous elections can be implemented by presidential order. This is false. As you know, we have to change many constitutional provisions as well as certain state legislations to hold simultaneous elections. Constitution explicitly mention about the simultaneous elections. This too is false. As you know, we have elections at the central level, at the state level as well as local body levels. Simultaneous election is only about electing representative for central legislature simultaneously. This too is false. As you know, it is at 3 levels. So all the statements, the answer is D. Next, consider the following statements with reference to X-ray polarimeter satellite. The PSLV is the launch vehicle. This is true. Second, the satellite will be launched into a sun synchronous orbit. This too is true. Third, the mission's expected lifespan is approximately 10 years. This is false, as we have seen. The life expectancy is 5 years. How many of the given statements are true? The answer is B, only 2. Next, the following statements. Index of core industries include 8 primary industries of index of industrial production. This is true. Next, the core industries constitute a weight over little 40% in the index of industrial production. This is true. The mining of critical minerals has been incorporated into the index of core industries. This is false. We have seen the 8 core industries while dealing with the index of core industries of Ministry of Commerce and Industries. So we know that this is false. So the answer is 1 and 2, only A. Now, how might the ongoing civil war in Myanmar affect the long-standing diplomatic ties between India and Myanmar, especially considering recent shifts in power dynamics within Myanmar? So as we have already seen that the civil war is raging in Myanmar, and how it will impact the ties of India and Myanmar, and how India has dealt with Myanmar in the past, and why it is important to Myanmar. You could write the answer. In the introduction, write down about the civil war, how it has its impact on the Myanmar, and where it started, when it started, and the reaction from the Myanmar citizens. It impacts regional dynamics, as you know, Myanmar is bordering India, and give India's historical perspective. We already seen about the various agreements, trade related pacts, connectivity projects, etc. And the potential effect it will have on India. In the body, write down focusing on human rights issue that present citizens are facing of the Myanmar due to the military junta's conflicts as well as its attacks, the democratic governance stand. The various countries are supporting it. Refugee influx because they are migrating to other countries, India too, where Manipur especially is witnessing the flux. Next, ensuring border security because we are bordering it, potential repercussions on trade, connectivity, and defense cooperation. In the conclusion, stress on the critical nature of the conflict's resolution, how it is difficult, given the power dynamics, given the possible influence of China. Next, emphasize the importance of maintaining delicate balance diplomacy and safeguarding national interests. India have to tread this path carefully, not to antagonize both the junta as well as the citizenry by taking a particular stand. It has to have the neutrality which it has always exposed at the international level and has been standing on the right side all the time, most of the times. This completes the discussion for today. Thank you everyone. Please do like, share and subscribe the channel.